Sampling can be easy or it can be hard. In this video today, I'm going to talk about my thought process when it comes to chopping samples or just using samples in general in my beats. Now, these techniques are sure to take you from a beginner to a pro. Let's get into the video. Music producers, welcome back to another video. It's me, and they call me Heat. I'm a music producer of over 15 years, and on my channel here, I show producers how to make some of the best boom bap, hip hop style beats. Now, when it comes to sampling, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about it. You know, you can chop your samples up, you can loop your samples, but I kind of just want to talk to you guys about just my thought process and how I go about thinking when I'm using samples, or, you know, whether I should loop it, whether I should chop it. Every beat is going to be different. Every beat's going to feel different. So it's not going to be, you know, this type of beat you should chop, this time you should loop. It's something that happens with your instincts. So when you're making a beat, you're thinking like, all right, where am I gonna go with this beat? Like, where am I gonna take this beat? What am I gonna do? Like, what is the sample saying essentially? What is the sample telling you to do? For me, nowadays, I like to chop my samples. And when I say chop it, taking a piece of a sample and another piece of a sample is not chopping the sample. That's looping. So you're taking one piece of something and you're taking another piece of something and you're putting them together. That's essentially a loop. Now, if you take that first piece and you chop that up into itty bitty pieces, that's chopping. There's another thing called micro chopping. So you may be taking it really small pieces and putting those really small pieces together. So you have looping, you have just regular chopping, and then you have micro chopping. Now I have a sample here by Mickey called Never Enough Time. And let me show it to you. Let me show you what the sample sounds like before I kind of explain where we're gonna go next. Now with this sample right here, of course, listening to it, you're probably thinking, well, just loop it up. You could just loop it. You could just take loops. And now, of course, we'll start with that. So we'll start with a loop. I just kind of want to show you like my thoughts and how I think about these things and how the beat will progressively change based off of looping or chopping. So for me, I know that the drum loop in the beginning is crazy. You could take that. That's something we could use right there. We could use that. So I'm gonna put that on the playlist just as something to just use for later. I'm gonna mute it though. So there's one loop. There's just a piece that we could use right there. When I think about looping, I think about Kanye West. I think about the Heat makers who produce for like Dipset, the Diplomats, and those are just a couple that I could name. There's so many other producers that loop, but like I said earlier, taking one piece of something and then taking another piece of something is not chopping, that's looping. And a lot of people consider that chopping just because you took something from, you know, an overall record or an overall song and put it into a new beat. That's not chopping, you're looping. Nothing wrong with that by any means at all. But I just want to make sure that you understand that looping and chopping is two totally different things, because what we're doing now and the thing that we're going to accomplish now is called looping. So now I found like a pretty open loop. So let's say if, you know, an artist wanted to get on this too, they could. That's like a good melodic spot. So I want to find something else that could be dope for like a turnaround. Kind of a weird, that note is weird, like that starting note is just a little off. So I essentially just turned on the stretch option right here and then turned my snap off, and then I just drug them out. So now what I can do is turn the stretch back off, keep my snap off so I can be able to drag these back so that they fit. Now I'm gonna play the sample or the loops that we have. Music producers, are you struggling with making better beats? You make a beat and it's just stuck in the loop and you just don't know what to do? Listen, head over to boombapuniversity.com to grab up the Cooking That Boom Bap Masterclass. In this course, I'm showing you literally how to chop samples, how to make better drum patterns, how to get those drums to knock, because I'm teaching you how to mix too. And like I said, I'm gonna teach you how to arrange that beat from that loop or that 8-bar loop that you have, turn it into a full beat so that you can give it to someone so they can rap on it, they can sing on it, or you wanna put it on a beat tape. Either way, I'm gonna show you exactly the full process on how I make my beats, how I find samples, how I make my drums knock in 1 2-hour course. Cooking That Boom Bap Masterclass, head over to boombapuniversity.com and pick up that course. Let's get back into the video. So now I think I wanna take my BPM to like 167. We'll do 170. Let's just go to 170. And now I'm gonna find some dope drums because I want to have a good pattern going too outside of just looping and chopping this sample. So I like this snare right here. This comes from the Amano Mari drum pack from volume 2, I think. And I'm using the playlist this time, of course. Sometimes it's just better for me, you know. I like that hi-hat too. I think I want to do, instead of doing it on the playlist, I'm going to just drag it here. Yeah, so okay, so we got the hi-hat going. All right, now let's see how the snare and the hi-hat work in conjunction with the sample. Like, let's see if everything sounds good. So I like to nudge my sample off just a little bit. We'll probably do 5. Then I'm gonna turn it down on the mixer here. Okay, I kind of like this. I like where this is going. Now, looping is, I mean, it can be good, but we don't always want to rely on looping. What it's gonna do, when you're looping, and again, this is just my thought process. When I'm looping, or when I always thought about loops, or when I was first making beats and I was looping, I was limited to the type of samples that I was using, because what I was doing was I was trying to find a loop all the time. And a lot of the time, samples don't have a particular loop that you can always take and loop it up. Samples won't always have something for you to just loop up. Now, I just showed you a process of looping and finding a good loop and looping that up. Now let me show you how you can take things to another level, chopping the sample. Now I won't stick with the same drums for this one. I'm gonna keep the hi-hat and the snare the same. Probably want to take it up to 180 this time. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this second loop, and I'm gonna just chop that. I'm not gonna go look for more. I'm just gonna chop what I already have here. So I grab my fruity slicer. I love the fruity slicer. I use Serato sample as well, but I love the fruity slicer for like quick stuff. Just get something done really fast. I'm gonna chop this up into 16 beats. So that means, in this case, because this is like a 4-bar loop or 2-bar loop, not really a lot that you really need to do chopping wise. Now I can get real crazy and chop this real small, and I'll show you that next. But right now I'm just wanting to show you what the chops are gonna sound like. All right, so now that we've chopped it, I'm hearing small little things with the notes that that are dope. Like that has like a little guitar lick in there. So what I can do is I can time stretch this to slow it down just slightly. And that's really what I do, is I try to time stretch it to see when it matches my drums. I'm gonna see how it sounds with the hi-hat and the snare. And it's funny because it sounds like the sample is saying it's the way you are. And I think that's really what it is there's like little vocal things that now make sense. So let me lay that down. I'm going to lay that pattern down just to see how it sounds. Not the best chopping, hopefully you're understanding the idea and where I'm trying to go here. So when you chop the sample like that, that really gives you a different vibe, a different way of thinking about the sample. So you can literally take any piece of the sample. So you can find a good loop or a loop that sounds really good and chop that loop. And even if it's just 2 bars, this is only a 2-bar loop that we chopped up. We took 4 bars, if we took 8 bars, we may have more to work with, but even with just a 2-bar loop, I'm able to do this. So now I'm gonna add that kick back in. I'm gonna put a kick pattern on top of that. And even with simple things like this simple stuff like changing the pitch, like finding a good pitch. That's crazy. Just changing the pitch, going down 1 semitone, made it sound so much better to me. Now I've showed you looping the sample and how the vibe will be looping it. I've showed you how to chop the sample and what the vibe would be chopping the sample. Now, the last thing that I want to show you is micro chopping up the sample into little itty bitty pieces and essentially doing the same thing that I just did, but now kind of creating a melody out of it. So we set it at 32 beats and it's going to triple the tempo. If I would have did 8, we now kind of are around the tempo of where the sample is actually at originally. If I do 16, we're double timing it now. If I do 32, we're now tripling the tempo. Don't fret. It's not going to affect your sample in any type of way here. That's just telling you what the BPM would be if it was in triple time, basically. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to change the beat, or I'm going to slice it to beat again, and it's going to give me more chops than I had before. Now they sound like this. So you see, you have like little small stuff like that. And with this right here, I would do something like this. So I would take the sample when I'm micro chopping like that, take it, EQ it a little bit, put some EQ on there to cut out the low end, maybe put some multi-band compression on it. And these are just things that I do. You don't necessarily have to go through this process. This is just what I do. Last thing I would do is put a delay on it and then turn the mix down a little bit. So it'll sound like this. Super dope, super dope. Just small little techniques that can really take things to another level. Being a beginner, you may not micro chop, you may not chop, you may just loop, starting from beginner point, looping it, to then getting a little bit more advanced, chopping it, then getting a little bit more professional or becoming more of a pro at it. We're now able to micro chop. I'm going to show you a little bit about how micro chopping can change the vibe as well. What? You hear that? So much better now. Now I'm going to actually lay this down. I'm going to show you one other trick that could take this to another level. Let's get them on time real quick, because we want these to flow like an actual melody. So So that's essentially micro chopping right there. That's what you call micro chopping. You're taking it and you're chopping up little itty bitty small parts to make now a brand new melody. And that's also a way to pretty much avoid the sample police. So when you're micro chopping, if you can chop it into very small pieces and you can get it to sound like a brand new thing without anybody knowing what it is, that's micro chopping. You've achieved micro chopping. Now, what I want to show you about micro chopping is this. Something like that right there, I would now time stretch it a little bit more to slow it down, right? So it's already at 277. We'll slow it down to like let's try 220, no, 213. We'll just do 213. All right, producers, and there you have it. You now have went from being a beginner to a pro when it comes to sampling. So now that's pretty much my thoughts on sampling and how to use samples and things like that. When I'm sampling, it's just really all about the feeling. You know what I'm saying? Some samples will want me to chop it, micro chop it. Some samples will want me to just loop it, but it just depends. I never stick to one type of way. Sometimes y'all may see me loop it, sometimes you may see me chop it, or sometimes you may see me chop like a loop and like replay out the loop because timing may be off, certain instruments may be off, so I have to kind of chop a specific spot. So now I have to replay it a certain way in order for it to all flow and work together. So I have a question for my fellow music producers. Do you like to chop your samples or do you like to loop them? I know that every beat's gonna be totally different, but what's your favorite thing to do? Do you like looping or do you like chopping? Let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Let's have some dope discussion, all right? If this video was valuable for you today, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you can catch weekly videos just like this, all right? I'm gonna get up out of here, and until next time, producers, peace.